Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into something that is honestly a profoundly personal thought experiment. It tackles something we've literally all felt at some point, midlife regret. I mean, we've all played that what if game, right? Wondering how just one different choice could have completely changed our whole trajectory. Well, the source material we're unpacking today takes that idea and just runs with it to a whole new level. It shows how facing our deepest regrets and our current messy reality can actually lead to some incredibly deep insights. Specifically, we'll look at how a life that feels weathered and bent can still be cultivated to bring forth some seriously sweet fruit. It's a fascinating journey, so let's just jump right in.
The purpose of life may be to discover what we do not want, so that we might finally recognize what we truly do want. Okay, this isn't just some abstract philosophical musings. For the author of our source material, who is reflecting on his life right in the middle of it, this idea is a lived, daily ache. It's the whole driving force behind this really intense, deliberate experiment in counterfactual history. He wanted to know, definitively, if a different path would have actually led to the life he truly desired.
Part 1. The Time Machine Experiment, Simulating an Alternate Life.
Okay, let's dive into this methodology because it's incredibly unique. The author actually used an AI-powered time machine simulation to test a pivotal divergence from his own past. So following this timeline from year 1, a totally random interruption is prevented, which means a crucial conversation with an ex-girlfriend actually gets to happen. And from there, the divergence just grows. Over simulated decades, an entirely different life plays out. But here's the absolute genius part of the whole experiment. The author used his hard-won, present-day knowledge to guide his younger, simulated self. At every single fork in the road, he provided the exact direction and support he lacked back then. And the result? A path that felt highly viable and actually really closely aligned with the deep desires he'd always carried.
But wow, the contrast between these two timelines is stark. In the simulated life, you see a young man who gets timely support exactly when direction is missing. Fears that had totally paralyzed the author in reality successfully overcome. The whole trajectory felt subjectively superior in almost every measurable way. But then, we look at the real timeline. The author describes a personal creative venture left unlaunched. He talks about property and business efforts marked by setback after setback, growing debt, dried up income, and this really heavy feeling that basic responsibilities to faith, family, and self are just going unmet. So the simulated life looks like a resounding success, while the real-life ledger looks, well, heavy with failure.
Part 2. The irreducible cost, the price of a superior life.
As we move forward here, the tone of this experiment shifts pretty dramatically. The simulation revealed that a better aligned life was genuinely possible. It was reachable. However, actually entering that subjectively superior life would mathematically require a different spouse and entirely different children. Which brings us to arguably the hardest, most unanswerable question a parent could ever face. I want you to just let this hang in the air for a second. Would I trade my real children for the subjectively superior alternate life? The alternate reality might have produced more kids, maybe even richer relationships with them on paper, but they would not be the specific souls sitting at his dinner table right now.
Now, what's really interesting about this is the brutal contrast between the what if and the what is. Think about it. The simulated children, as perfect as they might seem, were only ever described to him in AI-generated summaries. But the real children? They interrupt in mid-sentence. They laugh at a particular joke. They call him by a specific name that literally no one in any alternate branch of reality would ever use. The what if is vivid because it was beautifully written, sure, but the what is vivid because it's alive, breathing, and completely irreplaceable. So this realization completely reframes the author's regrets. The simulation actually proved something vital. The missing ingredient in his actual life was never a fundamental lack of courage. He wasn't uniquely flawed. What he lacked was the scaffolding of timely support. And here's the absolutely crucial takeaway for all of us. While the past branch is closed in practice, the scaffolding of support can still be built today. Lingering on a closed path only courts paralysis. The version of himself who starts constructing that scaffolding right now, that version is completely reachable.
Part 3. The Gnarled Tree, Age, Wind, and Deep Roots.
As the author processes all of this, he moves away from the high-tech AI simulation and into this really grounded, natural metaphor about aging and growth. He realizes he's no longer the pliable young sapling from year 1 of the simulation. You know, a tether can easily direct a young sapling's growth against an opposing wind. But he's now an old, gnarled tree brutally bent by 30 years of that exact same wind. The scaffolding that would have shaped him at 21 simply cannot shape him the same way today. You can't just unbend a mature trunk. But, and this is vital, those 30 years of grief and wind were not pure loss. They were tuition. That fierce wind is exactly what drove his roots so deeply into the ground.
This leads to a beautiful insight drawn straight from horticulture: grafting. A master orchardist knows you don't try to straighten an old, bent trunk. Instead, you use grafting to train an old tree at the branch, allowing it to draw sweet fruit from wood the trunk's history never even touched. It's like a giant puzzle. The core identity of the tree remains exactly the same, but its output, its future, is completely transformed. Regret and reality, when you actually accept them, prepare the tree for new life.
And this brilliantly illustrates the hidden strengths of that weathered trunk. The sapling wanted things shallowly, kind of just borrowing desires from others. But the gnarled tree, it wants with the massive weight of everything it has watched fail. The longings have grown profound, and the grief itself is proof of the depth of that desire. You don't grieve deeply for things you wanted lightly, right? Furthermore, think about the strangest fact of this entire AI experiment. The wise, perfect judgment that saved the simulated youth. Where did it actually come from? It came from the present-day gnarled tree. The author already possesses the wisdom he needs.
Part 4. The Master Orchardist. The discovery beneath the discovery.
So the judgment is there, and the desire is deep. But how does the grafting actually happen? The author explores this through a spiritual allegory of faith, broken down into 3 clear steps. First, the undeniable reality. A gnarled tree cannot graft itself, just like the young sapling couldn't tether itself. Second, according to an old allegory, the Lord of the Vineyard, which represents Christ in the author's reflection, refuses to abandon the corrupt aging tree because it genuinely grieves him to lose it. He wants it to bear sweeter fruit. Third, to save it, the orchardist sends laborers to dig, prune, and graft, working past all horticultural reason to bring the tree back to life.
What's really fascinating about this framework is that the master orchardist rarely touches a tree directly. Instead, the digging and the grafting arrive through human hands. And who are these laborers? Well, they're a spouse, a brother, a congregation, a friend showing up on a Saturday. They are the ordinary people in our daily lives. The orchardist assigns this vital work of support and scaffolding to people who are, quite often, bent trees themselves.
When we pull back and look at the whole shebang, we see exactly what the AI time machine actually offered. It offered no magical escape from his current life. It offered absolutely no neat resolution to his debt-surpassed failures. Instead, it offered a mirror, showing him both the life he wanted and the one he built. It acted as a pointer, revealing that timely support is what he needs right now. And finally, it became an altar. It forced him to take that unanswerable question, would he trade his children for a better life, and hand it over to the one who planted him among these specific, irreplaceable souls.
The massive realization here is that wanting itself has to be rebuilt here and now, not in some simulated past. What remains is to simply stand where the orchardist can actually reach him. The author concludes this deep reflection by leaning on the oldest prayer of the bent and weathered tree. Lord, I believe. Help thou mine unbelief. It's an admission of weakness, for sure, but also a profound opening to receive the grafting and scaffolding he desperately needs today.
Which leaves us with this final thought to consider. The branches of the past are closed, but new branches extend forward from today just as surely. So I have to ask you, what branches of your past do you need to stop looking at in order to stand where you can be reached, supported, and grafted today? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep reflecting, keep growing, and I'll catch you next time.